Hey everybody, welcome to a quick installment from Coding Hell. This I'm just going to go over how if statements work in Bash and a couple of use cases. And after recording this several times and it being terrible, I decided I would write an outline and make this go a little smoother. So hopefully we can do this in like 5 to 10 minutes. So if statements are exactly what your brain should tell you. They test if something's true and do one thing if it's true, and then you can choose to do other things if it's not true. So the basic setup for an if statement I've got over here on the left. You have an if with a test statement. Then it has to have then, which is a keyword that tells it to execute the code below if it's true. So in this case, we're just echoing it true. And then we have an else statement. You don't have to have the else statement in there. It's not necessary. The then is, but the else statement just says execute the code below me if it's not true or if it's false. And sorry about that. And then, goodness, the last thing that we have is you have to end the if statement. So the way it knows you're at the end of an if statement is you just put v. So we're going to copy and paste this real quick so you can see what it does. Whoa. Okay, that looked really ugly, so I'm just going to type this out. So we'll say if 1 is equal to 1. I'll explain why I'm putting quotes around that. Then echo true, else echo false, p. So there we go. It says 1 is equal to 1, so that's true. So that's really cool. Okay, so I will tell you this right now. If you're doing an if statement, you're going to want to use the double square brackets here. And that's because sometimes you may be tempted to use the single square brackets, but that doesn't allow you to do things like and or statements, whereas the double square brackets will. And those are actually a program in Bash. So it's like a keyword, kind of like if. Oh, sorry. So if is a keyword. So these are keywords that allow it to know how to parse the stuff inside of it. So always use these double square brackets. I'm going to give you a case where you might want to use something else, but that's a little bit below. So here's an example of if you want to have multiple conditions you're testing. If one fails, we can use the else if, which is written elif, to save you a couple, like 3 characters of typing. So you can say if 1 is equal to 2, which is not, then the echo condition is 1 is true. Else if 1 is equal to 1, then echo condition 2 is true. Else if neither of those are true, write neither is true. So let's go over here and put that in here. And you see it'll say condition 2 is true. So this is condition 1 up here. This is condition 2 down here. It's easier to see on the left side there. Another thing you should be aware of is if you want to do the opposite of what you're testing. So if you don't want to see if taco is equal to taco, if we want to say taco is not equal to taco, then you just add an exclamation mark at the beginning of this if statement. Oh, other important thing you need to note is always put a space between these double square brackets and your stuff. Again, it's like the exact same thing as if you were to type if and put something right after it, it wouldn't recognize it. So always put a space between your double square brackets and the conditions. Okay, so if you want to use a not, all you have to do is add an exclamation mark at the front here. So here we'll execute this, say if not taco equals taco, then echo taco is not taco, else echo taco is taco. Wow, that's confusing. So taco, wow. Yeah, that's really confusing. That's a bad example. But basically, if you want to not condition, you put it in like that. So here's some stuff to watch out for. So say you want to do some math comparisons. You want to say, okay, is 1 less than 2? Which you and I both know 1 is less than 2. If I put this in here, it'll say, okay, yes, 1 is less than 2. So it's behaving like we expect it to do. But what if I said, is 111 less than 2? So let's run it. It'll say, yes, 111 is less than 2. And you'll see that it says 111 is less than 2, which sounds crazy, but what it's actually doing is this standard thing that it does inside these square brackets is it compares strings. And so alphabetically, it's like saying is A come before B, and in a dictionary it would. So what we need to do is we need to tell it that we're working with a math with numbers and not strings. So the first way you can do that is with the -LT operator. So rather than using the actual less than symbol, if we use -LT, it tells it to evaluate it like a number. So here we can see it evaluated it right. The other thing is Bash has these the double parentheses, and that is a program that does math. So we also can say if double parentheses 111 is less than 2, then true or false, and it'll get it correct that way. So if you want to do math, use the double parentheses or use the -LT operator. Okay, so we also can use or and operators to test multiple conditions at once. So we could say, here's an example. So I can say if 1 is equal to 1 or 1 is equal to 2, then that'll evaluate as true because 1 is equal to 1. I'll say one of these was true, or we could say neither of them was true. And so if we execute it real quick, it'll say counting. All right, run it real quick. We can see it says one of these was true, and that makes sense. The AND operator, which is the double ampersands, we could do the same thing if we say if 1 is equal to 1 and 1 is equal to 2, then echo both were true, or else echo 1 or both of these was false. So there we go. Obviously, one of those is false. We can also check strings. There's a lot of string operators. So we can say, okay, set up this variable equal to nothing. And then we can test if it's set or not. You can see it says it was not set. So if you just say if double square brackets a variable name, it'll just say, it'll just tell you if it's set or not. So we could set variable equal to hello. And if we run the same thing, what we see here is that, yes, it's set to hello because it echoes. And it says variable is set to hello. So it's a way to check if people are like putting things in your program. There's a lot of different things it can do with files, like, for example, that -E flag tells you just if a file exists. So let's see here. So if I say file equals gofood.txt, you can see there's no file here called gofood.txt. So then if we check, we'll say there is no file there, but if we set file equal to if lesson.sh and run the code again, it'll say the file is already there. So it's a way to check if files exist. So we can also check ages of files compared to other things. So we could say file 1 is equal to if lesson, file 2 is equal to this rdata1. So I made that rdata1, so it's not going to be newer. But we can just run this real quick. And that's a way to test, like, say, if you've got a program that makes one file after another, and you reran it and it got halfway through, you can check if you need to run it on that second file or not. So that's why I have this. If 2 is newer than 1, then you need to redo it. Or if 1 is newer than 2. So the last thing we can do is we can test if programs are running correctly. And the way you can do that is, so say you've got a program that has to go to a certain directory, but you're not always sure if that directory exists for some reason. I don't know why. So what we have here is we can say, let's set our directory variable to not a real directory. And then to test if the CD step works, all you have to do is say if, and then put in your normal line of code after the if statement. And if it works out, then it'll go with the true statement. And if the program says there was some sort of problem, it'll go with the else statement. And here I've also put in a nested if statement. So if it doesn't work, it's going to echo this. Maybe it's not real, so we can then go and test. We can say, is it a directory? And if it is a directory, we say yes, it's a directory. Else, if it's, we can test if it's a file type other than a directory with the -f flag. And then we can say, okay, yeah, it's a file, but it's not a directory. And if neither of those are true, we can say, does this file not exist? And then do something with that. So let's go ahead and run that. And you can see it says, oh, I had a problem. There's no file there. And it'll say, okay, I couldn't get there. Is this file real? Let's check if it's real. And it'll say, there's not even a file there. Let's see here. So another example of this is, what if we just said directory, come on, little computer, directory equals, we'll set it to this, our object, and let's run this whole code again. What it'll say is, it says, okay, I can't go into that directory with CD, but it's not a directory, but it is a file. So this is like how it can be really useful. Or you could also test if you have read-write examples. I've got, if you go in and look at this file, I've got 2 links here that give examples of the different flags you can give, the different tests you can run with if. Hopefully those are useful to you, and if you have any more questions, just let me know.